For over a decade, Sister Wives has been selling us a dream, a promise, an experiment to prove love could be multiplied, not divided for women, one man, and a mission to prove that plural marriage wasn't broken, that it worked. The truth would be they were not on a date. They weren't in love, and it wasn't it by 2025. The dream is in tatters. 3 marriages down, a broken family irreparably shattered, and a fan base that still wants the same answer. Now, what happened here? Because in the end, what the audience looks back on isn't a slow-motion collapse in particular. They perceive a turning point instance when things just changed. And a lot of fans think that moment has a name, Robyn Brown. Today, we're lifting the lid on the most controversial wife ever in the series Sister Wives. To some, she is misunderstood. To others, she is the mastermind. And as for the internet, she's gotten Sobbin' Robyn as a nickname for a reason. Before we proceed to the outrage, the favoritism, and the allegations of dismantling the family herself, we need to go back, because this story did not begin with Kody. It didn't start with TLC, and it all started without polygamy, even as we know it on TV. It began with a little girl and what it means to wait. Robyn Brown was born on October 9, 1978, and she's a Libra, as her fans just love to point out, looking for harmony, charm, and diplomacy in her birth sign. However, Robyn Brown's childhood was far from balanced. She was raised in a religious community shaped by Mormon fundamentalism. Yes, but in terms of polygyny, she was worlds apart from what either Meri or Christine might. Right? There were no huge extended families sharing the same homes. There were no joint holidays. There was no constant sister-wife presence in their lives. Instead, Robyn was raised in what is known as separate household polygamy, which is even greater than one realizes. The Browns taught the value of family unity. Yet Robyn grew up with the reality of seeing her mother spend years with stretches of time that would make someone else a solo parent. Holidays came and went. Birthdays occurred. Special events took place, occasionally without daddy. Robyn has spoken about this openly. Watching her mother wait for attention, wait for affection, wait to be chosen. It's not a thing that will simply dissipate on its own. His mother, Alice, would become one of the most significant influences in Robyn's childhood. Robyn's mother would divorce his biological father when he was 9 years old, marrying Paul Howard Sullivan, known to Robyn as Dad on the show. In subsequent years, however, in reality, Paul worked as a land surveyor in steady employment related to either the Utah Highway Department or in Las Vegas. It was a stable job on paper, but emotionally, Robyn learned something early on. Love and polygamy is not assured. Time, however, and being quiet certainly does not bring attention. You survive by positioning yourself. Robyn has said herself about being a little rebellious in her childhood. Even in the comedy of fan admiration over breakdancing videos, there exists a deeper meaning in the message of a young woman wanting to be noticed, wanting to stand out. Then came her first marriage. By Robyn's own account, this was very painful for both her emotionally and financially. She married David Preston Jessup in June 1999, and she has 3 children with him, Dayton, Aurora, and Brina. She later confessed to the family, and cameras rolled, that she gave her virginity to a person who pleaded for it and did not deserve it. This statement alone is enough to spark heated debates, sympathy from viewers, or just a side-eye from a different angle. When she left that marriage, she didn't leave with clean hands. There was financial mess, credit problems, issues that showed up on film when she attempted to secure a mortgage in Las Vegas. So when Robyn appears on the scene in the Brown family saga, she is not coming onto this turf as some kind of free-spirited lover. Rather, she has scars. She has fear. She needs safety. But then comes the part where fate or coincidence enters the scene. After the divorce, Robyn went to visit a cousin in Utah, and then, depending on which version of the story you prefer to believe, that's where everything changed. In one, Kody and Meri just happened to call by her cousin's house casual like. In the other, Robyn actually met Kody in church, locking eyes across a congregation and being struck by lightning. To use her words, even Kody's account has another nuance that Meri encouraged him to ask Robyn to dance at a church dance months later. Sparks were flying. The first time they met, they clung to each. That is important because it helps explain fans' recognition early on in their fanhood just how loyal Robyn was to Meri from day one. Meri was her entree into their family, their protector, their advocate. Christine and Janelle, they weren't bought, and this hesitation would prove prophetic. The two immediately rushed to the kitchen to find out, because even before Robyn was married, the lines had already been crossed. The rules regarding dating came with the family. No kissing, no touching before marriage. This was to safeguard the feelings of all involved. Then came season 1 and the kiss. Kody and Robyn kissed when dating, which was against the rules the other wives had been following all these years. And this was just the tip of the iceberg. What was meant to be a moment of unity, shopping for a wedding dress with all the wives, instead became a moment of stealth betrayal. Kody, while hiding from his wives, opted to go pick a wedding dress with his wife, Robyn. When did it emerge? What's gotten into them? Christine couldn't even remain in Thesh left after giving the interview. That wasn't television drama. The best exotic that was real hurt. But then came the honeymoon. 11 days in San Diego, longer than any honeymoon the other wives had ever had. But if you thought that was bad enough, the next scene is one that still cannot be forgotten by fans. Even as Christine was pregnant with Truly, Kody was with Robyn, cuddling kisses, giving importance to his new partner while another wife was giving birth. For many television viewers, this was the first indication that something was indeed different. This was not balance anymore. This was nepotism. And once the door was opened, it never closed again. Pause here. If you're already feeling that sinking feeling in your gut, just wait until you hear what went on next, because the favor wasn't just doled out to the wives. Because now that Robyn was a part of the family, the cracks didn't just show up in the walls, they grew wider. Year after year, the viewers started recognizing a pattern. Kody's time, attention, patience, and emotional resources are no longer balanced. They started favoring one person. And even if no one dared to voice it out at first, the viewers already started thinking about it. Robyn was the favorite. But here's what makes this so complicated and quite honestly comparatively uncomfortable to unravel. Was Robyn taking more? Or was Kody giving it freely? This is sure enough, because while the viewers saw Robyn as the bad guy in this dynamic, the reality is that Kody didn't simply enable the inequality, he escalated it. He facilitated it. He maintained it. And this favoritism was not kept behind closed doors. It appeared during the moves. The rules, who would make these sacrifices? The sacrifices, and who was supposed to offer them. Let's talk about Vegas. For a moment. The cul-de-sac in Las Vegas seemed like the one thing this family had going for it. The wives were taken care of. An awful lot of the kids were. There was a sense of order, a sense of stability. But then, suddenly, Kody announced yet another massive change. Flagstaff *A. Gambled *Costly, emotionally draining Gand to the family. Structure. Fans began asking immediately why, but there was one answer that kept being repeated again and again. Dayton. Robyn single quotes as son had received an invitation to study at Northern Arizona University. Secondly, most viewers thought that Flagstaff relocation was basically aimed at allowing Robyn to be near Dayton. If that is so, then everything is different, because, you see, now we're not talking about a family decision anymore. This is a Robyn first plan masquerading as a group sacrifice. What about Flagstaff, though? It not only strained the family, it tore it apart. The houses were quite far apart. The unity vanished. And tensions erupted. On the other hand, Robyn's confessionals began racing. Few comments, side remarks, moments that just didn't feel right. And then, of course, there was the confessional where she subtly dissed Janelle's musical preference, which was a minute thing, but everyone caught that right away. You see, this is a family that was already dealing with insecurities, so these little jabs meant a lot. Then there were the moments that fans talk about to this day. Let's begin with one of the most talked about. Robyn ordered a portrait, not just any portrait, but an image of Kody with his 3 children from his previous marriage. Children he didn't biologically produce. Children he wasn't there for when they were growing up. Their biological father was not in the portrait. It was not an accurate reflection of reality. It recodified history, and the audience was thoroughly disturbed because it wasn't just art. It was a message, a visual statement of Kody being theirs. And perhaps always so. So much for the fans. For some of them, it just went too far. Taken away was a role, while his was lifted up. And then there were Robyn's remarks about the other wives' figures. In one of the confessionals, she spoke about stretch marks and weight, as if she was suggesting that the other wives weren't keeping romance alive in their marriages like she was doing in her own. It was a display of anger, but because those statements weren't just insensitive, they were extremely ironic too. Coming from a woman who was being treated better than everyone else in terms of Kody's affection, while other wives had to take care of their families. And then came the moment that made everyone pause. Robyn said that her marriage to Kody was like a business. He was my best customer, she told the police. Let that sink in. Within the family that is founded on both sacrifice and spiritual connection, Robyn spoke of her marriage as though it were transactional. Now, all sorts of things were falling into place, because while the other wives were struggling, compromising, shrinking themselves in order to keep the family, Robyn was positioning herself. However, this is where the complexity for the villainous role begins. If you spent your youthful days seeing your mother receive breadcrumbs within polygamy, if you learned early in life that love is something that is in short supply, if you once were the wife left waiting, wouldn't you fight to never be in that position again? Wouldn't you want to move? This doesn't make it right. Although it does explain it easily. According Gleiben's need for security conflicted with a family who required equality. And then there was Kody who, rather than dealing with the conflict, wanted to exacerbate it. Hard. He didn't just favor Robyn. In fact had justification. He defended it, and finally, he punished the rest of the wives. Which brings us right back to the point where everything ultimately shattered. Since favoritism succeeds by being quiet, however, it cannot coexist with accountability. But as the other wives finally began to demand better, it all simply collapsed. And it was at this point when the fans understood the truth. This wasn't just about Robyn. It was about Kody picking a woman and in the process, torching the rest of the family for the sake of his decision. And the aftermath? It was brutal because for so long, Sister Wives has been trying to show that what we're watching wasn't favoritism. It was different relationships, that every marriage is different. That equality doesn't necessarily mean sameness. But what nobody could overlook anymore was the following: when the system is just, people do not keep leaving the system. Then came the slow leaving of the women who helped build that family. Christine was the first domino. Christine had long been the emotional spine of her family. She had brought up children that were not her biological ones. She had soothed conflicts. She had taken her herd in order to keep the peace. Then she stopped. The fact that Christine understood that the point at which she no longer felt loved, no longer even felt like she'd been left alone, but rather that she'd been intentionally discluded, is that something shifted. There's a big difference between being unhappy and being finished with asking to be chosen. And when she left Kody, her fans were there for her. They celebrated. It was because, for steadfast fans who watched all these years, it was what was expected. That Christina was leaving was no surprise. It was because, for all these years, it has seemed like this version of plural marriage was the problem, not plural marriage itself. Janelle followed in emotion first, then in body. One thing about the Browns is very logical, independent, often depicted as being low-key. Janelle had taken this kind of imbalance longer than most women would have, but when she saw her children being pushed to the side, when she saw Kody favor one family over the rest, she'd had enough. And then there was Meri, the wife who opened the door to Robyn in the very beginning. But loyalty to Robyn has never protected Meri. It hasn't protected her or her marriage, nor has it brought her safety. Rather, she's become the warning, the wife who has adhered to the rules but still remains alone. By the time the dust had settled, 3 marriages were effectively finished. Now, what was the result? Indeed, Kody and Robyn, and that's when the story came together for the fans. Because if this were really about polygamy failing, he said, what made one marriage remain unaltered? This question sparked the furore. Audiences began watching old episodes, analyzing body language, rewatching confessionals. And suddenly, what had seemed insignificant was obvious. Robyn, crying while claiming she wanted sister wives. Kody, angry at anyone who dared to go against Robyn regulations that were subject to change as they became inconvenient for her. Eventually, rules that were inconvenient for others, and the fans were finished buying it. Social media became ruthless. Sobbin' Robyn, that name blew up, not because she was a crybaby, but because she always appeared to be crying right before she got held accountable. Whenever tough questions were asked, whenever punishment was looming. In Kody, he was no longer the misunderstood patriarch. He stopped being turned out to be the villain because, in the end, Robyn didn't tear the family apart on her own. Kody did. He made a choice to be comfortable rather than be preferred control to cooperation. He chose one wife over the system that he vowed to support. In return, Robyn also gained from it, but you can't confuse doing good with pulling strings from behind scenes. This is the truth that fans are still debating. Was Robyn being manipulative, or was she just the only person playing the game Kody was rewarding? Because here's the irony that never gets talked about enough, but Robyn's most feared outcome, being the wife nobody listens to, never happened, but only because another one had to fill that role as well. And that's where the anger resides, not only with the wives. But with the audience, because Sister Wives was not only a failure at being a family drama, it was a failure at being a promise of a love being able to be fair, of a sacrifice being shared, of no one being left behind. And when this promise was broken, it wasn't just one person they held accountable either. They blamed the dynamic. Thus, the question is not whether Robyn is the villain. The real question is this: without Robyn's presence in the family, I'd have robbed whether Kody would have found another favorite anyway. That was not yet as a result, because the point of favoritism is present. The structure, which perhaps means that the strength of the family might never never have been what they said it was, because even now, years after the cracks turned into fractures, sister wives can't escape the shadow of what happened. Every new episode, every interview, every confessional is filtered through the same lens: who spoke the truth, who was rewriting history. To a huge part of the audience, Robyn Brown became the poster child for all that went wrong. Not because she was favored, but because she was the representative of the end of the illusion. The end of we're all equal, the end of shared sacrifice, but the uncomfortable reality with which fans are still wrestling. Robyn didn't walk into a healthy family and destroy it. She walked into a fragile system that depended entirely on one man's sense of fairness, and that man failed. Kody guarded the goal. Kody called the shots. Kody decided where time, affection, and loyalty went, and when those resources became scarce, he chose comfort over responsibility. Lots about Robyn makes sense in light of her early life. A childhood spent watching her mother wait, learning that love and polygamy isn't automatic. It's earned, protected, and sometimes hoarded, so that once Robyn finally had security, she clung to it hard. And yes, there were those moments that made the viewers cringe, the portrait comments, those always-on cue tears, but none of those moments would have mattered had Kody not rewarded them. That's the part that the fans cannot turn a blind eye to anymore. Every time one of his wives spoke up, Kody shut them down. Whenever anyone called for balance, he called them disloyal. And every time Robyn was in dire need of protection, he gave it strongly. And therewith, he confirmed what the audience had already suspected: there was no more plural marriage. There was one marriage, and everyone else orbiting it. That realization is why Sister Wives now feels so different, heavier, more bitter, less hopeful. Because the experiment didn't just fail, it exposed something deeper: that polygamy, sifted through ego and favoritism, doesn't multiply love. It thickens it. And that concentration leaves casualties behind. Christine found her voice and walked away stronger. Neglect proved to be the better option then. Independence for Janelle. Meri understands that loyalty, which is never paid back, is a dead-end street. And Robyn, she got what she always wanted: secure to a husband in the present time, and a family built around her household, but at a cost, because no matter how the show continues, no matter how often Robyn insists she wanted the big family, fans will always remember this era as the moment everything changed. Everything changed in that instant. The last question is yours. Is Robyn the bad guy that fans make her out to be? Or is she a product of a broken system one Kody controlled from the start? Was she playing the game? Or was she just the only one who learned how to win it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear them. And if you've made it this far, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell, because we're not done unpacking the Brown family's contradictions. It has been the trend with Kody and Robyn that despite everything, the divorces that followed, the after effects, and the re-entry reaction, they still position themselves as being hurt the hardest, the misunderstood ones, the ones who tried the hardest. But here's what no one can ignore any longer: 3 women leaving the same man is no accident. That is a pattern when no other relationship is left intact other than the one to which the most time, care, and affection have been given. The story literally reveals itself. This is why Sister Wives no longer appears to be about plural marriage. This appears to be an autopsy. It is the dissection of a family that died due to favoritism, egos, and unbridged resentment. Fans are not just tuned in for the drama anymore. Fans are now tuned in for accountability. Crawl. Bonstrathire waiting to see if Kody has any admission of how his love was split, if Robyn ever recognizes that having an advantage meant that she did it at the expense of someone else. If the truth will ever be spoken without the tears being used as a shield. But that's why this conversation will never die. Because Robyn Brown isn't a reality TV show character anymore. She's an icon of what the crossroads of survival and power looks like, of what insecurity and privilege look like, of what a system of fairness looks like in the hands of an unfair player. And whether you land on the side of the villain in all this, the victim, or somewhere in between, Robyn did change. Sister Wives was never the same after she became a part of the family. So now it's your turn. Did you think that Robyn was being manipulated for her own purposes? Or was she reacting to what Kody was doing? Did this prove the inevitable result of polygamy, or merely the result of one individual who had issued too many guidelines, disregarding his own regulations? But would the family still be together if Robyn never became part of the Browns? Leave your honest opinion below. This fandom is definitely divided for a reason. And if you want even more deep diving, emotional breakdowns, and real talk about Sister Wives and the biggest contradictions of TLC, then be sure to subscribe to us. We are on track to 10K, and this channel is never shy about the truth, because some stories don't end when the cameras stop rolling. What do we do now? It wasn't just the dissolution of a family that Sister Wives Wives captured. It chronicled the slow disintegration of a belief system for years. Kody preached that plural marriage required selflessness, humility, and constant emotional work. That jealousy had to be confronted, not fed. That fairness wasn't optional, it was the foundation. And yet, when it mattered most, those principles were the first things to go, because when Robyn needed reassurance, Kody leaned in. When the other wives needed reassurance, he was pulling away. And instead of course correcting, he doubled down. That's why fans didn't only turn on Robyn, they turned the story on. They knew they had been living out a story of words that no longer accurately reflected their reality. Words of unity from a divided family, words of sacrifice from a family that practiced favoritism. And Robyn became the face of that contradiction, not because she caused every fracture, but because each fracture came with some gain for her. That's one tough pill any audience would have to swallow, and it explains why the debates never end, why comment sections explode, why fans still argue over old clips like they're evidence in a trial. Because Sister Wives stopped being entertainment. It became a cautionary tale, a warning of what happens when power goes unchecked, when emotional labor is distributed unevenly, and one voice matters more than the rest. And maybe that's the real legacy of the show. Not a proof that love can be multiplied, but a proof that favoritism, once introduced, multiplies damage instead. Whether Robyn is viewed as the villain, the survivor, or the wife standing in the wreckage, one thing is clear: the family that promised the world a new way of loving ended up showing us exactly how fragile that promise really was. And that's why this story still matters. Because long after the cameras stop rolling, the lessons stay. If you're still here, you're part of the conversation now. Keep it going in the comments. Share your take, and stay subscribed, because the truth about Sister Wives is still unfolding, and we'll be here to talk about it.